Yeah, so the next rough hour is going to be a little bit of fun. And after all of this hard work you did today, you're entitled to a little bit of fun. The reason I'm saying this also is because what follows now is not research. This is totally just only my view that I present you right now. It's not based on any evidence. So it's totally not what you should do as a researcher. But maybe what you should do as a human being, and I'm trying to give you a little bit of insight of what I do there. So also bear in mind, this is just my observations. So you might make totally different observations, and I'm happy to discuss this. So this is 100% my view, and N is 1, and yeah. So you were warned. So self-marketing as a researcher, and the first thing that I ask you is, whoops, and the slides don't work. Now there we go. Is why should you care? Why should you care for doing your own self-marketing as a researcher? And the short answer is you shouldn't. Of course not. I mean, you are indeed, and what we've seen today is exactly what I've written you. You are brilliant researchers. You're doing brilliant research, and people will notice. And people, and these are the people you care about anyway, and not the others. Isn't that the case? So, in the world of science, we seem to think, and this is mostly true from my perspective, is that your thoughts should matter. And that the ideas you work on and the things you investigate and the questions you validate and things you might even prove, that these things are very important and these should be noticed. And I totally agree with that. And this is what we call research. And you publish about this. And in an ideal world, this would be enough for you to receive the recognition you deserve as such a brilliant researcher. And to be invited to more prestigious positions and to do more research and continue on your work. Reality check, is it so? Do you sit at home? Yeah, currently you do. But do you sit at home and ponder about your research and think, someone will notice the great thing I'm doing here right now? Currently you don't have like any option, or do you? So is this the way we should conduct ourselves when going out there? And I think not quite. I think doing brilliant research is the prerequisite. Of course, you need to do this to start actually participating in the community. So you need to do brilliant research. Yeah, that's not the question. But I think visibility makes a difference. So getting recognized in your community matters. And the way you do research when you are connected to your community is also different than the way you do research in an isolated fashion, sitting at home, not talking to other people. And I think in this year particularly, this is very important because we have to somewhat isolate ourselves to get rid of this ghastly virus, of course. But that doesn't mean we should stop communicating and stop being visible to other people. And this is why conferences are important, giving talks is important, and we've heard a lot of good talks today. But what is actually visibility as a researcher? How do we become visible? And I found 3 things to be very important here, and I'm going to walk you through all of these 3 things today. And I think the first thing that you should be findable. So your findability matters. So it should be easy for other people to identify you. And the means you take for this findability, for this recognizability of yourself, they can be quite different. You can wear a funny hat to the conference. People will recognize you for that. Is that what you want to be recognized for? Maybe. Maybe also for your research. So in a way, people should be easily identify you with some topic, or with your name should evoke, this is the person working on this. This would be ideal. But the prerequisite for you to be findable in the community is actually to have a website. And I don't know if it's true for, I think it's true for all of the senior people in the Zoom call right now. They probably all do have a website. Do you as a junior researcher have a website? If not, take this home for today, do a website. And there's really no excuse for not having a website. It's really easy. So last year I did an online survey for where the participants were actually researchers. So we had to look them up, and we have to look up their emails to actually write them an email. And we could only do this if they had a website where the email was listed on, or if they did publications, but that's a different story. Yeah. And another thing you probably should not do is do not just depend on your institution for your website. You probably all got like at your university or your research facility, you all will probably have like a profile with your picture and your name. And most of the time your teaching responsibilities and stuff like that. This is important, of course. But the thing is, you are mobile. You will probably change universities once, twice, a couple of times in your career, and that's normal. We all do this, but your website probably shouldn't change. And if you find all of these forgotten websites of researchers, it's pretty interesting. You know? And the other thing is, your university might think that when you not work there anymore, they will take down your website. So don't rely on some old university website that you are not working with anymore, and don't get in this kind of dependency to that. And I used my university website for a long time as my sole website, so I'm speaking from my experience there. Don't do this. And it's really easy. So website generators make this easy for you. There are a couple of website generators for scientific profiles that even take your BibTeX and make it look nice and so on. So there's no reason not to do it. And you really, but be sure to customize it a little bit so you are a little bit distinct from anybody else a little bit, so that you are recognized again. And let me reiterate, there is no excuse for not having a website. Even as a junior researcher, do it. It takes you like half a day if you're really slow, and then you have one, and everybody is able to find you and recognize you. Ah, this is the person that spoke at OOPSLA 2020 about this topic. Well, one thing that I also struggle with a little bit is be consistent throughout your online presentation. So we register at like a numerous amount of websites right now. So you probably all have this conf-researcher.org profile from this conference when you gave a talk. You have your website. You might have a LinkedIn profile. If you are in Germany, you probably also have a crossing account. This is kind of the LinkedIn for Germany, only for Germans for some reason. And you probably have other social media profiles. And these should all, like, in my opinion, conform to one picture of yourself, one online presentation. And you can decide, do you want to put content in all of these platforms, or do you want to kind of merge everybody into one single channel? But that's up to you. But be consistent. So my second thought about visibility is, of course, you need to attract attention. So you should be making it easier for other people to remember you. Why is this the case? Well, think of the usual attention span of a typical professor. And it might look a little bit like this, and I hope, oh yeah, it actually plays. And it might look a little bit like this. So professors, especially if you're senior, you're doing all the things at the same time. You're juggling with 5 balls in the air. Yeah. So make it easy for them to recognize you. If you want to be seen, of course, I mean, if you rotate all the time, it's hard to see a person. But keep this picture in mind when trying to catch the attention of a professor. That's also true for industry, by the way. Because out there, it is an economy of attention. There is a lot of people in the field, and year by year, you can see this in the publication numbers, you can see this in the attendance records every time for conferences. There are more people in the field, and the more people there are in the field, the less likely is it for you to stand out. And so you need to be a little bit forward in catching the attention of someone that you want to really impress. And the thing about that, attracting attention is not very easy. And because it's not very easy, you should take all the chances you have that you get basically for free. Having a conference talk, you don't get for free. You did a lot of research, it's hard work. You did the publication, a bunch of reviews that, yes, this is very good research. And of course, that's not for free. But once you're there, use it wisely. You got that stage for like 15 to 20 minutes or 30 if you are in the doctoral symposium. So use that really wisely. So whenever you get the chance to do a talk, really get into it and think this is the thing where other people will recognize me. And why is this the case? Because great talks really stand out. People will actually notice if you give a brilliant talk. And people will remember your talk. And especially in this year, where all of these talks are being recorded and put to YouTube, either in a live stream, hello YouTube live streams people, and being accessible years after the conference. So last year we all gave talks at conferences. They weren't recorded. At some conferences, some other conferences did so. And these talks were ephemeral. They were like gone. In the minute you left the stage, you were only in the minds of people. And now you are actually recorded and people can see you again. And great talks there really stand out. This is a little bit of a repetition, but I keep saying this to all of my students, graduate or not. Take all the opportunities to speak, always. Well, let other people speak too, but in general, you know, when you get an opportunity to speak at some place, especially that's not your home, your academic home, do it always, because practice actually makes the professional. The pro tip here, basically, that I learned the hard way over time is you do not need to present every time something completely new. This is also true for this talk, by the way. This talk is based on a talk I gave last year. So not all of these slides are completely new for you. Some of them are, by the way. And this is something really I learned over time. You don't need to redo everything every time if you do a talk. It's actually counterproductive. You can reuse a lot, but be aware that you actually have a changing audience. If you give the same talk every week to the same amount of people, they will notice, of course. One thing that my supervisor told me once is publish wisely. This is one of the many ambiguously defined things. So what does this actually mean? When publishing at your current level, you're typically like in the position to get advices from your supervisor, and supervisors usually know the communities best, so listen there. But always think a little bit also outside the box and think, what may extend my visibility? Doug said this in his talk. Also think about workshops. Workshops sometimes are on the lower scale of supervisors saying, should we do this at a workshop? I mean, there's not a lot of attention there and so on. Yeah, but maybe you get the attention from the right people. and the right people that pick up your idea and maybe work on with you on that idea to make it an even greater idea. The ever more popular journal papers that we do in computer science, always go for journal first tracks at conferences. Always give a talk about your journal paper, because otherwise your journal paper, like so many, will be published and probably read by 2 or 3 people, because people don't recognize it yet in computer science yet. So always go for journal first. If you have a published journal paper, that's great. Someone said your research is brilliant, congratulations, but always go for a conference talk afterwards. That's why we have journal first tracks. One thing that Doug also briefly mentioned, always go for artifact evaluation. We have artifact evaluation for 9 years now. Next year we have it for 10 in our community, and this is a great thing. Just so if you haven't noticed this so far, in computer science we noticed that our experiments are reproducible very easily if we give them to other people, and other people can work upon our results if we make that publicly available. And to make this a little bit more visible and a little bit more accessible to people, and to have peer review also for that, artifact evaluation was invented. And this is a very nice quote I found, presumably by Andreas Seller. I couldn't confirm yet, but I think though, and he kind of funnily shares the story of how artifact evaluation came to its name purely by accident. So if you have a better name for artifact evaluation, the community invites you. But just as a brief history lesson here, so artifact evaluation was introduced at ESEC FSE 2011. Of course, people shared research artifacts before, but there wasn't just no formal process before that yet. And the interesting thing about that is it's quite a success story. And here, this is just a bunch of communities that I picked quite randomly. There are lots of more out there, so apologies to anybody that I missed here. So this is roughly the timeline. So software engineering was kind of the first thing to pilot this. Programming language conferences took off, took that very soon afterwards, and it's widely popular. It's spread through programming language in the community much faster than in software engineering. But other people looked it up, like adopted it as well. And this year, interestingly, also the security community adapted it. It's quite a good thing that we're moving to more visibility of our research. What has this to do with your visibility? Well, first of all, you get a nice badge on your paper. And interestingly, these things are now at the ACM conferences are nice and colorful. And they actually have an effect. And in psychology, they did this a little bit, almost at the same time. Badging they did before us. And here, this black line is the availability of artifacts for research articles in percent. And the black line is the journal that added artifact badging to their journal. So papers are then badged with this. So you might have done it for the badge, if you did it also. Is it boosting your bibliometrics? Good news is it might. There is some preliminary studies on that. We don't know yet. But it might. It might also boost your visibility. Yeah. And if you want to know, this is the shameless self-promotion part of the talk. If you want to know a little bit more about that, I actually written a paper about that with 2 brilliant colleagues that was published at FSE. No, this year. I spelled it wrong. It was actually 2020. The only error, but the link is right. So you get the slides and the link is right. And we interviewed all of the artifact reviewers that were out there since 2011. That were over 1,000 people. And they gave us really nice insights about the current state of artifact evaluation, and we did a bunch of things. So if you really want to know what gets your artifact accepted, read that paper. And also have a look at the video, because this was so much work. Doing conference videos, it's so much work. If you have a tool, if you made some good software at some point, do a tutorial. This seriously boosts things. Philip is here also. Philip and I did a tutorial at PLDI 2018 for Phaser, for our static analysis framework, and this boosted a usage of that framework so much we couldn't believe it. That was really, really crazy. So every time you have a thing that other people might find useful, do a tutorial. It doesn't need to be a full day, can be a half day to get people hands-on experience on your tools. This works really well. And usually there aren't enough at conferences, so it's also a pretty easy thing. It's a lot of work, but it really pays out. It gets you totally visible. And one thing that people do, that I do not for everything, but for something, is brand your work. The security people, the security researchers are brilliant at this. They have a name for every exploit they find. They even have a logo for every exploit they find. It's interesting. And people in our community do this too. So there is Felix Pauk, and he has a logo for all of his projects. And they look kind of nice, and you see, okay, he has some kind of color scheme going on, and you get some brand recognition here and so on. Of course, that's work, but people see it. And where do they see it? Basically here. If you looked at the laptop bags of all of your students, you would probably see this, a bunch of stickers. And we did this too. We made a lot of stickers, and sometimes you find money for that. These are not very expensive, by the way, and students really love them. They placard their laptop bags with that, and they are your free billboards for your project. If you get a recognizable logo as this one. We were really surprised how many students actually wanted these, so we actually had to order more. And they also go very well at conferences, I might say. So put them on the conference desk and everybody will pick them up. It's interesting. If you've got more funding, of course you can go for shirts if you're more than one person, if you're like a larger project. Mira did this year. I think that was last year. ECOOP, I think, I don't know. Oh, that was Splash, sorry. They did this for a project, and it also gets you a little bit of brand recognition if you are with multiple people at the conference. So the third part is also, we now talked a bunch of minutes about how to attract this thing. If you have this now, if you have the attention of people, don't hog it all for yourself. Make it also more easier for other people to stand out as well. And the one thing that we can do very well, there are other things as well, but one thing that you can do really, really easily is use social media. Social media has, and we talked a lot about this in the past couple of years, the dark sides of social media and so on, but it also has a bunch of benefits. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in the world. And there's a lot of ideas what is the ideal social network for computer science or for our fields in computer science. So from my observation, people seem to like Twitter the most. There has been this interesting event by Dave Shepard at this year's ESEC FSE to put Reddit on the map. I don't know if it works out, but let's see. So Twitter seems to work for most people. And the others like LinkedIn and so on, I found them to be a little less effective in getting word out, but your community might totally differ. And the thing about social media, and especially Twitter, is it's called social for a reason. There are different reactions that you can do, and the like isn't like a retweet. So in general, rule of thumb that I do, is like a like. It's like a pat on the back for the author. Ah, I've seen this. I like this. Well done. Yeah? If you do a retweet, whether you comment or not, it's like getting on a soapbox and shouting, well, look at them, how great they are. Because all of your followers will see that tweet. All of your followers will add to the impressions of that tweet. But be careful who you endorse and what you endorse, of course. Always read what you retweet. And I think Twitter now forces you to do that. Or at least like advises you, well, you're retweeting something without clicking on the link. Are you really certain you want to do that? Of course, you should do that. Be certain, like if you retweet, that's the same thing as saying, I would say the same thing, but this person is much more clever than I am. So how does the academic Twitterverse kind of work? So the thing, how I do it is like follow people whose posts you like. Don't think about seniority there. If you find the tweets of another junior researcher entertaining, insightful, or just informative, follow them. If that person happens to be a very famous professor, go for it. But seniority shouldn't be kind of the idea here on Twitter, who you follow and who you not follow. And the other thing is, no one knows if you unfollow, by the way. So if you followed someone and said like, again, the same boring tweet about artifact evaluation, you can click unfollow. This person will never know. By the way, this is a piece from Olaf Eliasson that I took a photo of last year when ECOOP was in London. So that was great. So that's why we have non-virtual conferences are great, because you get to go to places and photograph art. So a bunch of things that I found working for me on Twitter that I've seen other people as well is, of course, pictures and hashtags. We read a bunch of text all the time. We are good at that. But if we want to go on social media, we are like everybody else. We like pictures. We like visual clues. And pictures get really, really much more attention than just a bunch of text. And even if you have a paper to present, at least show me the front page of your paper, because there's the abstract, and I can read the abstract without following any link. This is really good. And also be certain to link the conferences where you had this paper. Be certain to use the right hashtag for that conference. Sometimes that's hard to find out. The better social media teams make that easier for you, by the way. Also use a bunch of hashtags a little bit outside the box, so other people have this on their screen, because sometimes some people actually follow hashtags. I don't, but some people do. And always treat, so what I do with my Twitter account is I treat it as an experiment platform. So you're all a little bit like the people I experiment on without even knowing, and I check. So there's a lot of analytics going on in Twitter, and you can really see what's going on behind the scenes. So this is 2 tweets from 2019, from last year from me. So these had like very similar expression numbers, as you can see here, but the interactions were quite different. The first one was the one with the left, with the photo I took in the bathroom at ICSI. Actually, where someone posted their front page of a paper to a mirror in the bathroom for some reason. And the other thing is just a paper announcement. And the interesting thing is the interaction is what you want to get high, because this is where other people retweet you and other people see you and recognize you, click on your profile, say, who is this person? And this happened. Also, this tweet got a lot of retweets from a bunch of senior people. And because other people don't follow my advice with not following just senior people, and they just followed senior people, this got a lot of more impressions. But make your own experiments. Look what works for your community. So I had to find out, and I'm still learning every time I do something. Yeah, but keep in mind, this is from another field. This is the so-called purchase funnel. This is what salespeople use to kind of classify contacts. And of course, you have something like people that are aware of you, people that are interested in you, people that have some desire to work with you, and then the people that actually do it. Yeah? And as you can see, this number narrows down. This is true for sales, but this is also true for scientific collaboration as well. Keep that a little in mind to see. And if you, what salespeople do is they make the first thing as wide as they can. Yeah, and then try to narrow it down. And you should basically do the same in doing so. Going a little bit away from Twitter, blogging, that's more time consuming, but this worked for some people. So Falian Hammonds is very great at that. By the way, I will upload these links and then you can upload the slides and then you can click on the links. So she's really great at blogging. She did live blogging for so many conferences. That was amazing. It's a lot of work, by the way, but that got her a lot of attention, of course. And I think this kind of work also pays back in the end. But as we're talking about publicity and leaving kind of the well-defined boundaries of science, is we need to talk about a little bit what can go wrong, because things can go wrong. Things can go horrifically wrong with communicating research results. And the one thing that I want to kind of sensitize you, no, I don't know. I have the German word in my head. I want to heighten your sensitivity for that a little bit, is that context matters. So you see this little nice curve, and I didn't make this up. This is actually a photograph that I took. It's actually this lobby. I don't know who designed this lobby, but I found this thing to be really emphasizing, yes, context matters. So the first picture was anything, and the other thing gave you a little bit of context. Yeah? So context always matters. So whenever you put something out there, be sure to put it in the right context and be sure to communicate precisely what you want and nothing. That's especially true if you have something that you're really excited about. So in Germany, a bunch of researchers had a really good breakthrough in breast cancer research. So they actually are working on a blood test to check for breast cancer. This would make some that you can really do in a large scale manner and that you can do on a regular basis without people having to go through very invasive procedures. And the problem with that is that the university communicated this a little bit prematurely and a little bit shortly. And especially on social media platforms like Twitter, where you have like a 140 character stream to fill, or 300, I don't know what the current rate is. This might happen to you as well. So sometimes it's really hard to shorten research insight. It's hard. It's even hard to shorten it to 10 pages sometimes. Yes, of course. But it's even harder to put it into 140 characters. What is the main thing your paper stands for? And in this case, the researchers failed because they actually had to retract that. The thing about that is that they had a very high false positive rate. So this blood test would really give you a notice, okay, you might have cancer in as high as rates like 46%. This is, of course, unacceptable. And this is, of course, not yet a breakthrough. It's very promising research. They did something that other people couldn't do before. But just because it was communicated so poorly, they had to retract that and stand in the public eye for some time as someone that did not do good research. And this is kind of my final word of warning for you. Whenever you do things, think about what could possibly go wrong, and try to communicate as clearly as you would in a paper, but in 140 characters. Thank you very much. Yeah, Yes, okay. There's also my last slide. If you have like questions for this and other topics, especially on artifact evaluation, let me know.